Good morning and welcome. Thank you for making the space to join us for this virtual webinar on a Friday morning. In the midst of all that's going on in the world, we just wanted to be able to find a space to engage and to inform and to really help you get your questions answered. So my name is Carmen Michael Smith. I am the Assistant Director of Recruitment and Enrollment here at Union Theological Seminary. And so this panel is for you. Make sure that you are typing your questions in the chat box to the right. And we will be answering questions as we go through the webinar. We really want to get your questions answered. So just sort of relax in, and I would like to introduce to you the Reverend Dr. Pamela Cooper White. She is the Dean at Union Theological Seminary, the Vice President of Academic Affairs, and Professor of Psychology and Religion. Dr. Cooper White.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be able to virtually see and hear you on this call. Really want to welcome you to this community. Some of you have been on webinars already, and so we're delighted to welcome you back. One of the things about Union that in the last couple of weeks has particularly made me proud, and I'm so excited about, is the way that we have been so nimble in responding to the crisis, and that we are able to do the kinds of things that we're doing right now. Our short mission statement, our little motto is that Union is the place where, I always get this wrong, where, help me, where faith and scholarship meet to reimagine the work of justice. And for sure, justice is always at the heart and soul of our whole curriculum and our mission as an institution, and where faith and scholarship come together to meet the challenges of our day. But I think I underestimated until just now the word reimagine in there, because I'm on a dean's list where deans of seminaries all across the country share questions and concerns and strategies. And I noticed that we were out in the forefront at Union as far as being able to imagine next steps and grab a hold of what we're going to do. And we have been really leaders in imagining how to adapt to a new environment. And I think that also really characterizes who we are as Union. So I'm excited to continue to imagine the future with you, and I want to welcome you to this webinar.
Thank you so much. So again, please make sure you're putting your questions to the right. Make sure that you leave your cameras on if you want them on, and your sound muted during this time. And so I want to introduce our panelists to you. We have the VP of Admissions and Financial Aid, Vanessa Hutchinson. We have Abigail Asgaralli, who is our Registrar. We have the Dr. Jeremy Hultin, Associate Professor of Biblical Languages, and the Right Reverend and Dean of EDS Union and Professor of Theology, Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas. And so if you guys could just say a few words, we'll start with Vanessa Hutchinson, VP of Admissions and Financial Aid.
Well, I won't speak very long because some of you have seen me before, but I just wanted to reiterate Pam's welcome. We're very excited to have this opportunity to engage in discussion with you, and I certainly hope to continue the conversation and see many of you in the fall.
Thank you. Dr. Jeremy Hultin.
Hi, my name is Jeremy. It's nice to see you all, and a few familiar faces, which is exciting. I teach biblical studies. I teach Greek and Hebrew and New Testament classes and classes on non-canonical texts from sort of 200 BCE to 200 CE. And I've been at Union 4 years. It's a really fun place to be. And I won't say more right now, but I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Abigail Asgaralli.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Carmen, for that welcome. I proudly serve as our registrar here at Union. I'm looking forward to meeting you all as well. Yesterday marked the start of my 4th month with Union, so I'm freshly here on staff, but I'm looking forward to supporting you all in the upcoming year.
Thank you. And Dean Kelly Brown Douglas.
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see all of you in virtual land. And first I should say, I'm Episcopalian, and Episcopalians like a whole lot of titles, right? but they're also peculiar about them. So I'm, as opposed to the Right Reverend, as Dean of the Episcopal Divinity School at Union, they say the Very Reverend, but one doesn't need to say any of that. I am Kelly Brown Douglas, and I am the Dean of the Episcopal Divinity School at Union. I also am a professor of theology here at Union as well. And I'm a glutton for good punishment because I was a student at Union, entered 40 years ago. Of course, I was a child genius, so I was in kindergarten when I entered. And I have come back again as dean and as professor of theology because I think good things are going on here. They were going on 40 years ago, and they continue to go on here now. And I will save more for later, but welcome and good to see all of you in virtual land.
Thank you all so much for those welcomes. I want to ask everyone on the panel this very important question. Why did you come to Union? And if we can start with the academic dean.
Well, I came to, can you hear me?
Yes.
I came to Union because I always had really had a gleam in my eye about wanting to teach at Union, and thought that that opportunity would not happen. And in fact, it happened with kind of a lot of synchronicity around it, that I had reached out just as the search committee was reaching out to me, unbeknownst to each other. And that was when I came into the chair in psychology and religion. But what really drew me was the social justice, the centrality of social justice in the program, because there are many ways that many seminaries do social justice as a kind of an add-on, or, oh yeah, and by the way, let's also think about context and race and gender and sexuality. But we find that to be the centerpiece of what we do, around which we build the whole curriculum in a very integrated way. And so I couldn't wait to be here, and I'm still very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hultin. Your sound went out for just a moment.
I'll speak about what I've admired about Union and what also drew me. Union, as someone who does ancient languages and texts, biblical texts, Union is a really unique place in terms of it's combining rigorous scholarship with passion about things that actually touch on the world. And some of you may or may not know how rare that is in the academic world. There tend to be places that are so focused on addressing contemporary issues that they're pretty soft intellectually. That's kind of nasty to say, but it's true. Or there's strict rules about orthodoxy about what you can and can't say. And what I think is exhilarating about this place is every question is fair game. You can discuss anything, you can take any view, but also no one would look askance at you if you asked about concrete modern issues that most of us care really deeply about. So to get to bring kind of all of yourself is exciting. And I guess I also like, I like having a physical campus. That's a funny thing to say right now while we're Zooming and while none of us can touch or see each other, but we live together. And I think that's like really rare in this world. And I've believed in that my whole life. I've always lived in some sort of like group situations. And I love seeing students in personal space and whatever. That kind of thing is just like, you're working together, you're a team. Why make false divisions and boundaries? I don't believe in those. So I like being at a place where we kind of have that fluid community.
Thank you so much. Abby, why did you come to Union?
Thanks. I was introduced to Union by a friend of mine who currently works there. And I'd come from an education teaching background, high school, middle school, and then I moved into nonprofits. And what a lot of those things have in common is just a strong sense of community. So as I was job hunting, that's exactly what I looked for. I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere, you know, even from an interview, which can be tough. And that's exactly what I felt at Union. And I think outside of what I found when I started just the job process, what I know about learning about Union and its drive towards social justice. Again, as someone who has come from a history of serving others, this is my way of also feeling like I'm continuing to serve the world by working at Union. And so I'm thankful for the strong community and also just for our social justice minded work.
Thank you. And Ding Douglas, why did you come to Union?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think for me, it's like, why did I come and why did I come back, right? And I think both of those, the answers to those questions come together. First, I should say, when I came to Union, and I came in 1979 as an MDiv student. And my journey to Union in many respects was a very personal one, which I'm sure it is the case for many of you, if not all of you. But when I came, I had no clue what went on at a seminary. I had only began to hear about theology right before I came, because that's what drew me. I came out of having been a psychology major, but I had this, as some have heard me speak about before, this kind of existential crisis. And I was trying to figure out how in the world I could be at once Black and Christian. And when I was in a junior in college, I was introduced to the works of James Cone by the chaplain of my college, who recognized me going through this angst. And I was a psych major. I had never heard of theology. I had certainly never heard of Union, and I certainly didn't know what happened in a seminary. And I thought, oh my gosh, do people just sit around and sing spirituals or something all day? And so it wasn't something that I was looking forward to doing. But all I knew is that I wanted to study with James Cone, with this man who had brought together my Blackness and my Christianity and reintroduced me in so many ways through his work to my grandmother's faith, to the Black faith tradition. So I came to Union really to just dig deeply down into that, with all intentions of going back into psychology, because you're young and you're arrogant. So I thought, wow, I can take this Black theology and then create a Black psychology, as if it had not already been created. But when I got to Union, I fell in love with not simply theological study, but with the community. It was chattering. I called it a community of chatter, of this sort of not simply intellectual chatter, but all of these people on their various journeys asking in some way, is there more to life than this? Seeking to find meaning from the various vantage points from which they came. And some people weren't sitting around just, singing spirituals or singing hymns or cloistered away. They were really digging deep into themselves, deep into the world. And we still have the pit. You would walk through the pit, which is sort of place you have to go through, sort of a common area to get to classes. I'd walk through the pit in the morning and people would be drinking coffee or whatever and eating donuts, and first thing in the morning, and they're having these rich conversations, and people that from various vantage points and perspectives that I had just never engaged with before. I didn't come to Union with the expectation of becoming a priest, and here I am, who knew? And I didn't come to Union with the intention of staying and doing a PhD. Here I am, who knew? But I fell in love with the quest. And I think that's what Union's all about. And that's why I came back, because I found it's still engaged in the quest. In the quest for what? In the quest to make meaning, to find meaning, in the quest for a more just future, in the quest for really people seeking to answer, what is that more to life than this? And people seeking to find meaning. And Union, people say that New York isn't the world, but the world is in New York. And that's what I think about Union, that the world is in Union, not only because it's in New York, but all of the people that come here. So you have the nuns and the people that are searching and all of that. And that's what I like about Union. That's why I stayed against my will, but my soul needed it, so I stayed. And that's why I came back, and so it's full circle. So I'm not, can you tell I'm not passionate about it?
Thank you so much. Anyone who wants to answer this, just let me know. I know that when, as a former student, I was anxious, ready to go, not sure exactly what it was and what I had gotten myself into. I felt a personal call and a pulling to come, but I really didn't know what I was getting myself into and how it would be relevant to my life, to the world. So I would ask, why seminary? What is it? Why now? Why come? What's the significance? Dean.
I'll give it a go, and then let my colleagues join in. You know, when I think of seminary, and I really think of the root word for seminary, the Latin word, and it means seedbed. Or seed plot, but seed bed. That is a seed bed for things to germinate and to grow. And I think of seminary as, in fact, that. A seed bed, but a seed bed for what? It's a seed bed that helps to prepare people for the kind of ministries, however they define those ministries, that will indeed make a difference in the world. What kind of difference are we talking about? A difference that will point the world toward a more just future. And so in many ways, I believe that why seminary? Because that's what we, it seems to me, are supposed to do with this time that is ours. Somehow we have to make this place a little bit better so that it comes a little bit closer to that arc, the end of that arc of the moral universe that bends toward justice. Union's committed to being on that arc. And what we do is at a seminary is we look at the different ways through which throughout history in which people have tried, in fact, to navigate this world, to understand it with a connection to something that is greater than themselves, and the various ways in which they've tried to navigate it in connection to this more just, transcendent future. And I think that seminary is a key to that, seminary training, because I think that faith communities are the only communities, however you define those faith communities, are the only communities that by definition are not accountable to the present, but they're accountable to a future. And that's the future of justice. That's the arc, right? The end of the arc. And so I think seminaries are important in that regard, as that sort of seedbed of training as we move toward that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to tell us why seminary is important and valuable at this time?
Yeah, I want to go back to the faith and scholarship issue, and it really jumps off from what Dean Kelly just said, but to emphasize the faith side even more. About student body are Christian, the other 2/3 are either of other faith traditions or spiritual but not religious or unaffiliated and seeking something transcendent, something spiritual, some way of making meaning. And I think that seminary is important as a seedbed, but also a hotbed for progressive spiritual and theological thought in this country at a time when, the Christian right has been so captivated by the politics of the moment, and the politics of the moment have been so loudly captivated by the Christian right, that we have a responsibility to become more and more articulate and intellectually informed and faithfully formed to speak against that. from faith traditions and from our spirituality, and that this is a place where we really can become a hotbed for training how to be activists in the faith who can counter those destructive messages. So I think that's very important. We are unapologetically progressive at Union. And you can be in the entire spectrum of Christianity, and you can be, we have a Muslim studies track, we have a Buddhist studies track, we have people who are Jewish and other faith traditions and nuns, but we work together, I think, in our interreligious capacity, we work together to create an imaginary that brings progressive politics together with the discussion of faith and spirituality in a way that we think we need to take out into the marketplace, into the agora of public discourse, and to counter those destructive messages. So that's why I think seminary is as crucial now, if not more so, than at other times in our history.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question? Okay, Dean Douglas had said something about the arc leaning towards justice, a more just world, a future. I would ask, how does Union, as an institution as a whole, institutions are made up of people, but as a whole, how are we doing in terms of leaning towards that arc, working towards justice in our daily practices, our daily operations at Union? Anyone like to speak on that? How are we moving progressively? And I would say, especially towards things of mental health and spiritual formation, how are we moving towards that?
Oh, that was going there. I mean, first, I'm going to let other people also speak to this from the classroom perspective about difficult conversations that happen often, because when people come together with so much passion, there's also at times when we clash and we have to talk about really hard things. And so those hard conversations happen in the classroom, and I think all the faculty are very dedicated to facilitating those conversations in a way that leads toward growth and mutual recognition, and not simply heady debates or tearing one another down. But to address the mental health issue in particular and spiritual formation, we have recognized, and this happens often, I think, in many seminaries, that the things that happen in the classroom also lead to personal change and questioning. And, you know, Kelly talked about the existential questions, even crises. You come in thinking that you're pretty secure in what you believe, and then you hear something in your Bible classroom or your theology classroom that really upsets the apple cart in terms of what you thought you knew and where your ground was that you stood on. And so that can also be a spiritual formation question, and it can also be a mental health question. And so we're working very hard, actually. We have a new dean of students who's not with us on this panel today, but she has a great deal of experience, 3 years of experience in working with mental health and crisis management. She's been a wonderful support to students already in this time that we're in now. And at the same time, we're looking at spiritual formation as something that we want to grow. And we're right now in the process of recruiting a student peer chaplain team who will be doing spiritual care amongst the student body with supervision and support from one of our interfaith ministers, of whom we have 3 on campus. Our chapel is not just a place for sort of the choreography of liturgy and worship, but very much a community of worship as a part of our overall spiritual formation as a community. And we're talking about these things all the time. They're at the forefront, actually, of our planning and our thinking. So I think holistic is the word that I would use to say that we try very much as a community, both faculty and staff, to bring these things together for people's growth in faith and in scholarship. It's not that they're in isolated silos from each other, but that we want to think about those things as wholesomely as we can.
Thank you. Jeremy, Dr. Hultin, I would ask, you are you work with biblical languages, and coming to Union, we have a lot of nuns, N-O-N-E. We have atheists, we have a diversity of followings that come to Union. And I'm going to be reading, and for a lot of people, that can create some anxiety, some tension. how would you approach speaking to students who say, I have to read the Bible, or I have to really look at this in that way, like, and I feel some kind of way?
Well, thank you, Carmen. You know, I'll give a couple types of answer, but my first answer is, in 4 years here and the 4 years before, I was teaching in Australia, which is very secular. So I was teaching Bible to people who are just think it's crazy that anyone anywhere is religious. And I've just never had an issue between, like, it's just never been a problem. Not that it hasn't come up, but kind of almost going to the prior question as well, I'd say this. I think one of the ways hard questions get dealt with, because is that you can foster an atmosphere where we're addressing really sensitive personal things, but we're doing so in a way that is leavened with a bit of humor and a bit of humility and some mutual trust. And I've just found in my classes, like I'm teaching the Gospel of Luke right now, and I'm just picturing the class sitting right next to each other. There's my Jewish student with a kippah. There's the atheist sitting next to him. They've become best friends during the semester. Then there's a couple kind of more traditional type Christians from other countries especially, and that's a diversity we have at Union, people from all over the world. And within 2 weeks, everyone likes each other. There's a bit of teasing. There's honest, heartfelt stuff too. But because there's a bit of trust and friendship, the Jewish student can say, boy, this passage really rubs me the wrong way. Or the atheist student can say, this reminds me of when I was in a fundamentalist church in the South, and oh my gosh, this is the verse I can remember, blah, blah, blah. And that's great learning, because everyone's learning, how does a Jewish PhD student from a different institution across the street, how does he read the New Testament? Oh, what is it like for someone who's an atheist to read, and she wants to study Bible, to read the New Testament? And so everyone's learning from each other. And honestly, I feel like I would rather put my energy into fostering that sort of environment rather than doing a whole lot of prolegomena at the beginning of the semester about rules and procedures for our discussions. Because I think I just have not had a single problem. Not that there haven't been painful moments. Sometimes we stay after class to talk, but there's been enough trust and humility that maybe even someone can laugh at themselves and say, oh, I gotta be, anyway, you get the idea. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone to please put your questions in the chat. We're getting ready to move to the Q&A section, so please start putting your questions there so that they can be answered. And I would ask this of everyone on the panel. I'm an incoming student, whether I've been to school before, whether I've been out in the work field and returning to school, what is the best piece of advice that you would give me or you were given about entering seminary? And sure, Dr. Hultin.
All right, I'll go brief. Quit all your social media and practice your concentration. There's no point in coming if you're going to be super, super distracted. Spend a year or two here, 3 years, like really engaged and thinking hard, because you're going to be busy and hectic the rest of your life. You'll be busy and hectic here. It's New York. You're still going to have jobs and families, blah, blah, blah. So I'm exaggerating, but I would say begin to slow your mind down. And it doesn't have to be quitting social media, but whatever it does for you, where you practice, because that's a precious thing, is to have the chance, like the very Reverend Kelly Brown Douglas said, very Reverend, I didn't know that, that you only get those transformative moments she was describing with the sort of deep reading a big thinker like her was doing. And it's hard, it's unnatural, like it's a change of pace. So anyway, I kind of prepare mentally to go slow and to attend, to listen to, anyway, that's all, I'll shut up.
Abigail.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd say if you are feeling nervous or want some advice, some of the best advice I could think of right now is to remember that our school's not very big, and so find your community. So as my colleagues have shared, We might be having hard conversations in the classroom. Those are very courageous spaces. But there's also sometimes a need to have a smaller conversation. And so I encourage you to explore student caucuses. Think about what it's like to be Black at Union. Think about what it's like to be Latinx at Union. We also have Student Senate, other ways to share your voice and as a leader on campus and get involved. So find your community, find your tribe, and know that our doors are always open to support you.
Thank you. Yes.
I would say also come with the attitude that when you're challenged or someone directly challenges you, to think about that as a gift as opposed to a threat, as hard as that might be in the moment, because there's a lot of challenging conversations and we all come with our own passions, and then we discover there are other people's passions that we never even thought about, and that there are ways of learning that we never even thought about. And so to try to have the perspective that even when something kind of strikes you as hard in the moment, that can be one of those moments you'll look back on 5-10 years from now and say, wow, you know, that was a moment that really changed me and helped me to grow. So to keep that open mind and to bear in mind the perspective that everybody in this community is working and doing as hard as they can to be the best person that they can be. And so to come with a charitable open mind. And as Pema Chodron says, I love this saying, don't believe everything you think. Allow yourself to think something new.
Thank you so much. Vanessa Hutchinson.
Well, you know, one of the things I think that's really wonderful about Union is that these kinds of conversations are happening not only in the classroom, but they're also happening throughout the Union community, through student engagement, in public events that we hold, in public dialogue that's occurring all the time. And I know many of the faculty here are engaged in some of that. And then also the work that students do through their participation in caucuses. For example, we started off the year with a conference on theology and disability that was sponsored by the Disability Caucus at Union. And they came to faculty and administrators to ask for support, and we were able to do that to help them put on the conference. And it was something that was new for Union and really started as a student idea. And so as an administrator, and I've been with Union for the past 2 years, but also worked for larger institutions like NYU, Stanford. And I'm always amazed at how nimble Union is as a small institution. And that I always describe Union as a small but mighty team, because we're able to, we really do pay attention to students and engage with students around their concerns. And we're able to shift when we see that there's something important to our students and that we also want to support to try to make it happen. And so it's really nice to be part of that kind of community.
Thank you. And Dean Douglas.
Yes, thank you. I think I'll bring together sort of this question with the earlier question in terms of things that happen in the classroom and the tough conversations, et cetera, I think that if you come to Union, and it's what I think is really exciting about the classroom space, that you have to come not expecting to find the right answers, but come expecting to learn about and to ask different questions. And I always say education is about asking the right questions, not necessarily finding the right answers. And that just leaves you open, and you begin to hear questions that people ask from a variety of contexts and experiences, et cetera. And that's what makes it exciting. Now, the question becomes, so you've got all these different people here at Union, and I declare we do. And so how does that work in a classroom space and in a classroom discussion? And when everybody's holding tightly, you know, and we do, whether we say we do or not, we have that little piece of our territory that we aren't going to give up. And so what happens when all of that comes together in a classroom? I say this, and I think it's what happens at Union in general. It's what happens in our classroom spaces. It's a certainly motto, if you will, that I live by, and that is that we come with the understanding to Union. So if you come to Union, you've got to come ready to live into this understanding, and that is that every single solitary human being, every person that has breath is sacred and deserves to be treated and respected as such, and that no one person has the corner on whatever the truth may be. And if you come with that, then you are going to come ready to learn. And you're really, if you come with that attitude, I declare Union can be a fun place. And I must say that one of the reasons I I didn't expect Union when I came 40 years ago to be fun, but it was, because learning, I know this sounds so baby boomer, and I am a baby boomer, and it's so cliche, but learning's fun. And Union makes it fun, because Union doesn't make you say, oh my God, I don't have that answer right. Union keeps probing you, and that's why I came back. You know, I remember Jim Cone just kept saying, find your voice, find your voice. And every time I thought I had an answer to the question, he pushed me again. I'm like, oh my God, I thought I had it. And that's what Union's all about. You're gonna leave here thinking, I thought I had it, but all I know, now all I have are more questions. That's what's exciting, that's what's fun. I think people at Union take learning seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously. And you see that with the faculty. You know, I look at my colleagues right now, and we all tease one another, even as much as we respect one another. And that's what learning's all about. And that's why we can push each other to ask a different question. And that's Union, I think, asking different questions.
Thank you so much. And Dean Cooper White, did you have another comment?
Oh, no, I was just applauding Dean Kelly's comment about finding better questions. I was thinking of the poet Rilke's phrase about loving the questions. And I think that actually is one of the things that distinguishes progressive Christianity, progressive faith in general, from fundamentalist faiths of all kinds, is that fundamentalism looks for hard and fast answers that will say, this is what you do, this is how you do it, and this is what it means to be right. And on the contrary, I think progressive faith traditions look for expanding the questions and expanding the exploration. That doesn't mean there's no ground to stand on. It's not total ultimate relativism. There are things that we know morally are right and wrong, but that within a vast parameter, we are able to explore what it means in this time to be here and to be called to make a difference. So love the questions, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We are going to move into the question and answer portion. There are a few questions here on the side and a few thanks, so please read, because there are people thanking you for your answers. And so this question is, Dean Douglas mentioned that one of the initial attractions to Union centered around this question of being Black and Christian. It made me wonder how those kinds of ideas translate into the student body at Union. This is a diversity question. I wonder about the racial and class mix of the students who are currently part of the Union family. Would someone like to take that? Vanessa.
I'm happy to take that. One of the things that attracted me to Union is its diversity, and really on every measure. You know, when you think about just, you know, we've talked a little bit about just in terms of the faith makeup of the class, over 40 different denominations, people from other religious faiths, and then also atheists and people that don't ascribe to any particular denomination. Racially, we're very diverse and reflect, I would say, sort of the country that we live in. We're I don't have the exact stats on hand, but I would say we're probably about, 13 to 15% Black, about 8% Latino. And I see Abby, our registrar, nodding. I know she tracks some of this. So I am getting it right. We're also 18% international. And, we're a small community. Our total enrollment is about 275 students. And so I think we're both small, for a very small institution, we're incredibly diverse. And I'll also say that, when you look at issues of gender and sexuality, we're also very diverse. We have a large population of queer and trans students here. And so we really reflect, I think, the diversity of the country that we live in. And that's one of the reasons why I think there's been a lot of conversation about difficult conversations, because we strive to be a space that is inclusive. And we're not afraid to discuss issues of identity and diversity.
Thank you. Dean Douglas.
Yeah, so, as the resident theologian on the panel, so I want to take a stab at even that question theologically. And because, first of all, Vanessa's right, we're a very diverse community. At Union, we defy and queer the binaries. And we do that in the classroom. And we do that in terms of, we embody that. So we are a reflection for those who believe in a transcendent and call it God. I like to say we are a reflection, we try to be a reflection of God's very rich creation, including God's very rich human creation. And that's not a binary creation. On any level. That's not racially binary, that's not whatever, that's not gender, it's not a gender binary. And Union on every level lives into its, I think, theological belief that the world in which God created is richly diverse, and it's not a binary creation, unlike the world that human beings have constructed. And so that's what you're gonna find at Union. And we try to open our doors so that we can make sure that we embody that and embrace that. Can we be better? Can we grow more? Can we become more diverse in certain areas, whether it's racially, ethnically, gender, sexual expression, etc.? Sure. And so we can. But that's what we're trying to do, because it makes for a richer conversation in and out of the classroom. And so to answer your question, that's who we're committed to be. Are we perfect? No. But are we perfectly committed? Yes.
Thank you. Well said. There's another question for the classroom. They want to know how the professors on the panel work to aid students' spiritual and emotional formation. Yes.
Obviously, some fields lend themselves to that more directly than others, but I would say that this faculty is actually quite remarkable in the way in which everybody really attends to those issues and to their own. I mean, as a pastoral theologian, which is my primary field, you can't do any kind of care for others without also attending to your own spiritual and emotional growth and formation. And I think our faculty are quite uniquely committed to their own interactions with each other and their own prayer life and their own spiritual growth. And in that way, Jeremy referred earlier to the way in which we also have many informal encounters with one another. We live in community, that there's a way in which we do recognize, and I use that word in a very highlighted way, there's that recognition is at the heart of how babies come into the world and become people, and that mutual recognition is a very important aspect of the ways in which we learn and teach that goes beyond the classroom subject. And I think our faculty are very committed to having those kinds of human interactions and recognizing and being able to read the classroom and to try to take the temperature and help people to share that humanity with one another. Certainly in the field of pastoral and practical theology, you don't get out of the classroom without examining yourself deeply and inwardly, as well as thinking about tools. That pastoral and practical theology don't start with doctrine and dogma. They start with human suffering and human experience and build theology from the human experience and the ground up. And liberation theology and many other theologies do the same thing. And I think at Union, we're committed to theological exploration that really comes in that inductive way and not just starting with, here's the doctrine and this is what you need to learn to be the right kind of Christian or Buddhist or Muslim or Jew. We start with human experience and we take it very seriously.
Thank you. There's a question for Dr. Hultin. It says, I see from your CV that you taught at Yale Divinity for a number of years. From a professional and Union community member perspective, what did you find to be the biggest difference between Yale and Union? Aside from a comparison to Yale specifically from panel members, from an experiential perspective, what sets Union apart from other institutions?
I would say the shortest answer, and send me an email if you want to hear more about it or something, but it was that Union is more people are planning to use their training here to continue with political work or religiously tinged political work. A significant number of people here are going into, are going to get ordained and be ministers of some sort, or are going to go on to academic work. And so the difference is that I know when I was at Yale Divinity School for a decade or more, it was more people training for ordained ministry or academics. Those were the two main things. And here it's a wider spectrum with a more nonprofits, more political movements, more union organizing, a broader range of things. That's the shortest answer, I think.
Thank you.
I also just have to pipe up and say that the other difference between Union and most other seminaries, if not nearly all, is our very strong commitment to interreligious engagement, and that is a requirement of all students in the master's program that you take courses in interreligious engagement. So that really that is deeply embedded in our curriculum at this point. It's not an add-on.
Thank you. Another question says, in light of the virus, are there any discussions about possibly giving a distance option for next year? Thinking Dean Cooper White?
You know, yeah, I want to hear what Vanessa has to say about this as well, but there's just so much we don't know at this point. We don't know how the virus is going to evolve. We know that our society is going to be irrevocably changed by this experience, that we will not be the same when we come back from it, however it is that we come back from it. We've been very nimble thus far in keeping our academics going in a way that is humane. We have not tried to push everybody into keeping up exactly the same schedule and the same rigor as we had in the past, and yet at the same time integrating the learning that we're all having together from being in this experience. I would say that commitment will absolutely continue. In what exact form or shape it will be, we can't predict at this point, but I would say that there should be some flexibility, and that's about the most I can say at this point. We may even find ourselves in a position with a resurgence of the virus where we have to be online again. We don't know, but we do know from our experience thus far that this is a faculty and administration that work very creatively to address problems as they arise and to keep the students' well-being at the center. So that is a commitment I can absolutely make.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say, you know, in terms of where our society is going to go and where Union and other seminaries and higher ed institutions are going to go for the fall, I think we're all, you know, I think really, we're all taking it day by day, week by week, because we're all in the same condition. And so I can say that Union, but also our peer institutions, we've been in dialogue on a lot of these issues to think about, as the world changes, how do we then evolve and adapt so that we can continue to serve students. And really these conversations are happening day by day. You know, yesterday I was just on a call with 9,000 other administrators talking about how will we adapt our financial aid policies to support students through this really difficult time. And so, you know, all of us are in our own roles are asked to be nimble. And so, you know, I would certainly say that our hope is that we are able to, that we certainly hope that we are in a position to offer our degree programs in person in the fall, because we think there's something meaningful about our community and we'd like to preserve that. But then we also can say that we are finding ways to weather the storm, and that we'll continue to do that in ways that best serve students. And so, you know, I will say that you have all, as applicants and prospective students that we would like to have part of our community, have been incredibly generous, patient, and responsive as an institution as we've navigated that change. And so we'll continue to do what we have done, which is communicate with you and be transparent and honest about where we are and what options are to come.
Thank you, Vanessa.
One thing I might just add is that we do have very good technological capacity. We're in an old building that looks like it came out of Oxford in the 14th century, but we actually, we've had classes before where we've had some people Zoom in and other people be in the room. We have pretty up-to-date tech, and so many things are possible for us that might not be possible in some other institutions, and that itself is not going to be a barrier.
A couple of more questions. With all going on in the world right now, different from that of psychology or social sciences, can theology offer a different perspective to the world today? Yes.
I'll try to tackle that and then invite my colleagues to. I deeply believe yes, which stems from what I said earlier. In fact, I think that this is our challenge and this is our call. Again, when we talk about theology, when we talk about religion, religious studies, etc., we are talking in large measure about a people who have indeed said, you know, religion, let me back up. Religion involves a question and an answer, however you ask that question. And that question really is there more to life than this? Is there more to life than this sort of mortal, finite, imperfect human reality? Is there more to justice than this, right? And one can say yes or no. Some people answer no, this is it. When you come to seminary, you're with people who have wrestled with that question, who are wrestling with that question, but by and large, those people have said yes, even if they haven't figured out what that really looks like. Yes, there's more to life than this. Yes, there's more to justice than this. And so that, to me, is what makes theology, the religious, the seminary, faith communities different, because we are not captive to the this. We are not captive to the way things are. We live in this sense of the already, but the not yet. And to me, that's why the faith communities, whatever those communities are, that's why religious leaders, whomever they are, that's why institutions like ours are particularly important in this time, because we have to continue to hold our world, ourselves, and our society to the more. And we have to train students and train people who are going into however they define their ministries. We have to train them in such a way that they are always moving toward the already, the not yet, the more. And so we are a seedbed. We're a seedbed for hope. And not a false hope, but a real hope. And I'm going to end here and shut up. I think, and it's one of the things that keeps me in this business and why I think it's important. And people have heard me say this before because I live by it. Even in the midst of this culture in which we find ourselves, I am the great-granddaughter of an enslaved woman. And every time I think of her, and I knew her, she was born into slavery. Her name was Mama Mary. I think of those people who were born in slavery, who died in slavery, who never ever dreamt that they would breathe a free breath. And yet they fought for freedom anyhow. And that's because they believed in a freedom that was the justice of God. They believed that the arc of the moral universe bent toward justice. And so it was because of them that I'm sitting here talking to you right now, right? So that they fought for a freedom that they would not see, but a freedom that they knew, in fact, and I don't mean to rhyme, but they knew, in fact, would be. And to me, that's why seminaries are important. That's why theological education is important. That's why faith communities are important, because we are the seedbed for the hope that is justice. So yes, to you, and so we're particularly important in an age where the injustice of our world continues to reveal itself in more and more raw and complex ways.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your questions and all of these wonderful answers. I just wanted to say to all the students, I was just a couple of years ago exactly where you are. I understand the anxiousness of it, and I would just offer you the same advice that was given to me by many of these panelists and so many great leaders, which is to submit and to surrender to the process of becoming. I was trying to hold on to who I was and who I thought God was and all of that. And someone said, but you didn't come to this place to hold on to who you were. You came to become more so that you could be more into the world. So I held on to this poem and it encouraged me, and I hope it encourages you. It says, when you've come to the end of all the light that you know and are about to step off into the darkness, faith says that one of two things will happen. There will be something solid for you to stand on, or you will be taught to fly. So come to union, submit, surrender, and soar, because once you submit and once you surrender, you will soar at union. Thank you so much for participating. This will be online later, and we thank all of our panelists for all of your great answers and questions. Have a great day, everyone.